Last week, I tore down the worst Subaru engine I've ever seen in my life. One of the worst blown up engines that I've ever seen, period. A 4-cylinder that lost every single rod. Not sure how that was possible. Many of you theorized that it was flat-toed in gear. However, if it over-revved for a long period of time, over red line, you would think that this rubber timing belt would have some sort of damage. It would be shredded. That's my first thought. But this belt, it has relatively, it's perfect. There's no missing teeth. There's nothing wrong with this timing belt. Which tells me that if it was over-revved, it was only for a brief moment, because the amount of resistance from rods smashing into the block and crank would have probably broken that belt, or at least done some sort of damage. Now, today's teardown, probably not going to be as bad as last week. It is going to be crappier because we're working with a Dodge 4. Okay, it's a 4.7 Powertech, and that's not why. It's not crappy because it's a 4.7. It's crappy because I had to dig this out of a scrap metal bin that was full of water. You guys have been asking for one of these engines for a really long time. Every single video that I put out, there's at least one comment requesting this engine. Maybe a 3.7. But I look at them the same. I don't really sell a lot of these engines. I don't buy vehicles with these engines, which is why I haven't run across a core yet. So when I was at one of the yards I deal with, I saw this at the bottom. I'm going to dig that out. So it looks bad. That's why I say it's crappy. That bin was filled with water, so we're going to probably find some rust inside. The crank pulley's broken. This is broken. This is broken. This is broken. Okay, it's very broken. But this didn't really cost me anything. So we're doing it for the video. That's what this is, a teardown for the video. The Chrysler 4.7 has been around since the late 90s. This came out in the 99 model year Jeep Grand Cherokee. They also offered a high output version in the Overland, which I think it had better cams, a different intake manifold, and it made something like 20 or 30 more horsepower. Most of these make around 215 to 220 horsepower, and they're available in a lot of vehicles, in the Dodge Ram, and the Commander, the Chrysler Aspen, the Mitsubishi Raider, the Dakota, the Durango, and the Grand Cherokee. Pretty widely used engine. I might be missing one or two. And these engines have a reputation for not being the most reliable. I always hear the same thing from their owners, that it dropped a valve seat. It overheated and it dropped a seat. It seems to be a Chrysler thing from this era, although I think, and I've seen many of these vehicles at the auction wrecked with 300,000 miles on them. Like anything else, if you just pay attention to the gauges and maintenance, it'll last. Just like, I don't know, you're supposed to if you have a car. Well, let's start where we need to. Let's pull the plugs out. That one's going to be fun. Why won't this one come out? Oh, there's stuff in there. Still no. Why won't this come out? All right, I finally got that piece of plastic out of there. Well, we have 7 champion plugs and 1 NGK. The plugs themselves don't look like they have any damage. I don't see any bent straps or smashed electrodes. Everything looks okay. I don't see any signs of malice in the combustion palace, except it does look like we're going to be contending with some rust just based on that one plug right there. Well, I know it's super early in the video for a dipstick fight, but it is time to remove the dipstick because it overhangs the intake manifold. So we've got one bolt here, and it goes into the valley of the block. I'm sure it'll come right out. Next, we're going to pull the intake manifold. What has happened to the EGR valve? Well, it appears the EGR valve has been bent over into the intake, so we just need to unbend it. I might just unbolt the EGR valve. Oh yeah, that's much easier. Oh, that was easy. Well, let's take a look here. Say, they're definitely pretty ugly looking. Yeah, there's definitely water sitting in it. Definitely has some debris in there. Oh yeah, water. Something else I noticed is that this engine has heat tabs on it and a stock number, which tells me this engine was likely bought and then returned. It looks like there might have been a heat tab right there and then it fell off, probably because it wasn't cleaned when it was installed, or maybe it fell off because it overheated. Next, I'm going to pull the exhaust manifolds. Okay, so it takes, what, 3 different sizes to get these off? Did Ford make this? So far, I've used 10, 12, and now I'm about to use the 13. Oh, the 13s are on the bottom. Now we're going to start with the valve covers. Well, let's take a look here. Actually, it doesn't look too bad in here. All the valve train's intact. Wait a minute. Oh, that's pretty loosey-goosey. I would venture to say that that is excessive chain play. Chain play, that sounds wrong. Yeah, something's up there. But it could have an oil pressure fed tensioner, and it just doesn't have any, oil pressure currently. And then here is a magnetic pickup, and I just pulled a sliver of metal off of it. Okay. So it may be kind of hard to see in there, but you can see the amount of play there in the timing chain. There's also some plastic broken off down here, but I think that's from this engine getting beat up. I'd have to look at that valve cover again, but I'm pretty sure the front of it had some damage. Let's go pull the other side off and see what that looks like. Well, there's no valve cover gasket, so that's not a good sign. What also isn't a good sign is this part that's broken and the lack of timing chain. That's a bad sign. Where'd it go? Did somebody pull it off? It doesn't look like the head's been off. So where's the chain? It did a chain delete. I don't believe that for a second. So normally there's a timing chain. It goes in this area. Oh. Well, so there's bad news and bad news, and it's actually good news for you guys because I'd say this engine is defective. Yes, that's an accurate representation of the situation currently. This is going to be fun. So again, it may be kind of hard to see. If you look way back there, there's a chain carcass in there. It's all crammed in down there. There's gonna be some carnage. That's broken there. I did not expect not to see a chain. Well, I suppose it's time to strip the front of this engine down. I guess I could pull the heads next. Oh man, you know what? No, we're gonna pull the front cover off. That's what we're gonna do. And now the water pump. Oh, whoa. Too fast. Also, that reeks now. Ugh. Why did I smell that? It's kind of a cool looking water pump. Looks like it's got some coolant sitting in here. Maybe it was leaking a little bit. Spins nice. Yeah, it's a good pump. We're just gonna pretend that didn't happen. Well, I'll get this, the remnants of a crank pulley off next. Oh, that was tight. We'll save this in case we need to turn this over. You know what? Let's get this thing drained first. Just because I gotta know. Nope. We're not gonna do that. Is it empty? That's not oil. I guess that's the stuff they put in the new cars. Doesn't work in the old engines. Hopefully this is a big enough pan. It looks like it's kind of slowing down. I would assume most of that is going to be rainwater, or is it rain oil? That pan is going to be great. While it's draining, we're going to get these motor mounts off of the engine. Now it's time to use the harmonic balancer puller and an LS push rod. Now what you want to do, if you're going to use an LS push rod, is just give it a little dip of oil. You don't want to double dip it, but that way it has something to spin on. This should work. It did. Now it's time to remove a whole bunch of 13mm bolts to pull this front cover. That can't be it. Nope, that has to come out. Now let's see how hard this is to get off. That's not too bad. Oh, we're leaking coolant. Oh no. Well, that's not good. Okay. I'm not touching that. Broken. Part of a guide. It's fine. Okay, so it's pretty broken. I found this lone chain link hanging out inside the timing cover, tucked down in one of those crevasses. So there's where the chain's supposed to go. There's the ghost tensioner. There's a broken tensioner right there. And oh, yeah. That's all the chain. So that's not really a good place to keep it. It's supposed to be over there, but another link for the chain right there. And it looks like there's some metal stuff down there. Who knew a 4.7 would blow up? That looks like a piece of, that's a piece of guide right there. Probably off of this side rail. Neat. Well, I guess we could start pulling some stuff apart. Does that slide off of there? Yep. A little more work than I thought. I see how this works. How does this work? Wait, all this is tied together? Oh, okay. So we're just gonna zip all the timing stuff loose. I guess I should probably pull this cam gear. We'll do that next. I know you come off. How does this work? What am I doing wrong here, guys? Wait a minute, here's the broken chain. I feel like a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Oh man, this chain was slain. The slain chain. Oh, there's tensioner here. Looks good. Man, nothing's going in the bin today. Oh, that might not come off. So I'm going to do the right thing and try to turn the engine over. What's the worst that could happen? I got to show you what I found here. Let's go this way. Nope. Oh, you mean I can't do it? I think I'm cutting through rust right now. This is really good for it. The pistons rings are cutting through some rust. Well, I think that's good enough to show you. So there's that woodruff key. And then there's that woodruff key. And I think that was the same woodruff key. I think it broke in whatever happened here. You can see the surface of that gear is chewed up pretty bad. It sheared the woodruff key. I don't know how we're going to get this off. I'll try to fish this piece out next. But this is going to be a challenge. Yep. A comment on last week's video where I used a screwdriver as a chisel said that I'm dead to them. Well, first off, you know, a screwdriver can be a chisel, but a chisel can't be a screwdriver. It's kind of like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not a square. It's fine, guys. Just don't look. If it's bothered you, just don't look. Oh, she's coming out. Oh, it's broken. Oh, we knew that. I'll go put this over with the chain. I'll show you that carnage in a minute. But first, we have a crank gear to remove. Oh, I think it moves now. I can't tell if it's moving. I think it is, just judging by the amount of play here. I think once I get it past this little raised section, it should just slide right off. But getting it to that point is going to be all the fun. Okay, I got an idea. Let's just use something a little bit bigger. You know something's going down when I'm putting the brakes on. Oh, it's working. Yes! Just need a little persuasion. One nice timing set. Okay, it's not nice. It's actually not nice at all. Well, that piece is really chewed up from the chain. That's broken in half. That rail is absolutely destroyed. There's even a little bit of damage to the top of the oil pump housing here. I think this chain we can probably... Well, at least that one survived. Well, here's some of that carnage. There's our broken chain. Here's the woodruff key. You can see that little end is present on that side. It's gone because it is in the crankshaft timing gear. Bad. Also, there's the broken chain rail. Now, I don't need to take the cams out to pull the head, but I am going to remove the cam from this side. I've actually sold lots of 4.7 cams out of the Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland, because I guess they're an upgrade for some of the earlier cams. They're a little bit more aggressive. So I'm pretty accustomed to pulling these. So we'll get this out, take a look at the valve train, take a look at the cam journals. Huh. Well, that bolt is slightly damaged. So is that. Cam actually looks pretty good. So all the journals look pretty good. The rollers feel pretty good. I'm sure they never fail. I'm being sarcastic. Yeah, everything checks out in the valve train. The cam has a little bit of wear in the journals, but it's not terrible. It really doesn't look bad. Definitely seen worse. Next, I'm going to pop this cap out really quick. Or break the broken part. It's fine. I still need to get this cap out. I have to take this out so that I have access to the bolts the front that hold the cylinder head to the block. And I could take that out, but I don't think I need to. Now we're going to get, there's 4 10mm bolts that hold the head to the block. Next I'm going to pull the rockers, so otherwise it'll come falling down when I turn this engine on its side. Now it's time to crack the head bolts loose. It seems my socket's too thick walled for that. Or not. Now I think this will just come right off.
Ew.
Well, we are definitely going to contend with some rust. That's probably the worst cylinder there. That one's not terrible. That one's pretty clean. Let's remove this head gasket. That was good. I'm going to clear all this stuff off, roll this engine over, and drain all of this out of the cylinders. I'm sure it's not going to make a mess. I'll just go slow. Whoops. I'll just... Oops. I think that's good. Get this spray down a little bit here. Good old WD. That one's pretty rough. There is one important thing, though. I don't see any dings in any of the pistons, which is a good sign. With a broken chain, you expect to see some bent valves, but the valves can't bend unless they hit the piston. I don't see that in any of these. Gotta do our test. That side gets an A. So the pistons all look pretty good. This bore is pretty rusty, but I could get the crank to turn a little bit, so I think we can cut through the rest of that pretty easily. That bore looks good. Again, I don't see any dings or damage to the tops of the pistons, which tells me there is no piston to valve contact, which is great. There's that broken guide still mounted to this head, but the head actually looks pretty good. I mean, it's going to need a valve job from moisture and rust probably pitted, but I don't see any bent valves. I don't see any seats that have fallen. This all looks pretty good. I've decided it would be prudent of me to remove the camshaft from the other side. Same story on this side. All the rollers are actually even nicer. The journals look good. All the valve train looks really good. And the cam from that bank also looks good. There's a little bit of wear on the journals, but it's really not bad. I would definitely reuse these cams. Next, we need to remove these chain guides, and to do that, I need to remove this and this. This rail has some wear, but it's not that bad. Don't buy used chain rails. Time to crack these head bolts loose. Oh, this head has a bunch of junk in it. Okay, so before I pull this off, This was the side that still had a timing chain on it, so I don't expect any damage. At least that's what I'm hoping for, because these heads are worth a little bit of money. Well, the head gasket removed itself. And yum. I don't see any marks on these two pistons. Let's roll this over and dump all this engine sauce. Give it the old WD. Yeah, I don't see any damage whatsoever as far as marks on the top of the pistons. All right, let's do the test. That side also gets an A for all connected. It's really a shame that these cores are left outside sometimes, because look at the condition of the bore. That's going to require machine work, whereas if this had been stored under cover, it likely would have been fine. You can see the ones that did not have water ingested. Pretty nice. Same deal with the cylinder head. I don't see any damage. Nothing's jumping out at me. Obviously, these are going to need to go to the machine shop just to be checked, probably resurfaced. Next, we're going to make an effort to get this thing to turn all the way over. I think it's this one right here. We're almost there. Yeah, rings are great at cutting rust. Now look at it. They all go to the top of the bore. Just a little rusty. Now I'm going to pull the oil pan. Normally I'd flip the engine over, but because it had some broken timing chain stuff, I think there's going to be some things in the pan. So I'll just leave it in this direction. I'll pull it this way. Pretty sure I have all the bolts out, but we're going to find out pretty quick. Or not. This thing is really stubborn. I'm going to thread one bolt in it. We're going to give it some help here. I don't think I missed any. It is acting like it though. Oh, I think I see what's going on. I think it's trying to pull the windage tray with the pan. I need to separate the two. Okay, see if we can get this apart here. I didn't really think this was going to be like this. The question is, why is it like this? Well, this poor windage tray, it didn't have a chance. And we're off. So this is what we've got in the pan. Another chunk of timing rail. That's part of the broken link, the timing chain. And this looks like the foil from the top of an oil jug. That's not supposed to be in your crankcase. Make sure you never drop that in there. Don't do that. And more chain links. And then in here, this looks great in here, doesn't it? More plastic. More plastic. I don't really see anything else notable. Just some more pieces of plastic. Let's go flip this engine over and look at that pickup. Not that pickup. Well, the pickup certainly has a bunch of that milky oil in there, but I don't see any foreign objects. Well, maybe there might be something tucked in there. Let's get this removed and I'll see if I can shake anything loose. And there's the windage tray. I guess that's an oil pan gasket too. I wrecked that completely. See if we can get anything onto this. I think it's just a bunch of that milky oil in there. All right, let's get the oil pump out. What would a teardown be without some oil pump dissection? Actually looks really good. There's really no notable wear. A few scratches on the housing here, circular scratches, like maybe a little bit of debris ran through here. But yeah, it's not bad at all. I would say this is probably moderate damage. It's really not that bad. Maybe a little debris ran through here, but it wasn't as bad as we've seen. Now it's time to pull the rods and pistons. You know what we're going to do? We're going to rotate this to push that piston to the top of the bore. On these rusty cylinders, it's kind of tough to get them out. That worked out really well. Oh yes, we're moving. Too far, way too far. See, was this a rusty one? Yeah. Oh, need that. Now we're moving. Without rust, they just fall right out. Time for the next two. And the final two. Spins over nice now. The bearings actually look really nice. They are the original standard bearings. I don't see hardly any damage at all. Now the rods and pistons, this is the one that fell. They all have some pretty bad skirt wear on the thrust side. There's a better example. It depends on which cylinder. Some are obviously better than others. Wrist pins are all pretty stiff, probably from the amount of moisture in this engine. But upon closer inspection, we have one brand new valve relief. That was made by a valve that was hung open when the rotating assembly pushed this rod and piston up into it. And upon much closer inspection, it appears that that valve, that intake valve, is bent. Just judging by the way it sits here and the way it sits here. It's probably slight, but that doesn't mean the head's junk. It just means that this head is going to need a valve Now it is time to remove the bed plate, and to do that, there are 3 different size bolts. There's 10s, 13s, and 15s. I don't think I missed any. I'm actually going to try to pry this up with the bolts in it so that the bolts keep their location in case this block has any value, which a rusty 4.7 may not. I was trying to pull the crank with it. Oh, is that main seal? I don't know how heavy this is, but it is iron. It doesn't want to let go. Oh, it's not too bad. Crank should just come right out. Let's get that. Well, the main bearings look really good too. Didn't really expect to see any damage here, judging by the condition of the cam journals and the rod bearings. All the journals on the crank look pretty good too. Obviously, if we saw some bearing damage, that would be a different situation. However, I'm a little apprehensive to call this crank good because of what happened at the site of the woodruff key. You can see there's a little bit of damage on the snout. I'm not sure if this would actually cause a problem, but when it comes to timing and woodruff keys and damage to snouts, it's always a risk when you know you're using something that has damage. And I don't even know if a 4.7 crank has a lot of value. Now this is a 36 or 32 tooth trigger wheel, which means it's a later one. This is actually an engine out of an 06 Grand Cherokee. The earlier ones are 16 tooth, and you can tell 16 versus 32 without having to do any actual homework. If you go out to your vehicle, if you have a 4.7, and you look at the number of plugs on your engine controller, your PCM or ECM, if you have 4 plugs or space for 4 plugs, it's a 32 tooth. If you have 3 plugs, it's a 16. Well, it's kind of a shame this engine was left outside because there is some pitting in the bore. Several bores actually, probably 3 or 4. But it also has some vertical scratches that coincide with the wear we saw on the piston skirts. It's certainly not terrible. I think most of it would clean up with a dingleberry hone. I mean, dingleball. I always say that wrong. This is how my brain works. The other bank looks pretty much the same as this. It's hard to not let last week's Subaru teardown skew how we feel about the severity of this engine failure, because compared to last week, this thing just needs a set of plugs. But in reality, this is definitely a bad engine. This was the opposite type of failure from last week. Last week was a high RPM, high load, tons of explosions and sparks and heat. In this situation, this was probably a low RPM, low load failure, because had this thing been cruising down the highway, we would have seen a whole bank of new valve reliefs, but we only saw one tiny little ding in one piston, which is kind of surprising considering what happened to this engine. This was kind of surprising actually, because looking at the outside of this engine and what I had to do to get this engine, I anticipated no parts to be able to sell out of it. But a timing cover and a pair of serviceable heads, maybe, that's much more than I bargained for. So if you'd like to buy parts out of this engine or any of the other engines I've torn down, you can go to importapart.com and peruse our inventory. If you don't see what you're looking for, you can fill out our part request form, which sends us an email of exactly what you're looking for. You can also email us. I'll leave that in the video description as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.